Welcome back to Biktrix Live on a lovely Friday afternoon. I'm super stoked for this one. I know originally the schedule said we were going to do some touch-up paint instruction. However, I have a super special guest who's only in town for a limited amount of time, and I wanted to take advantage of that. So we're going to do a little switcheroo in our schedule and talk about drivetrain maintenance and care and troubleshooting and all the things to do with your drivetrain. So I'd like to introduce you to my guest. Come on in. This is Jawn. He is the showroom mechanic at our space in Vancouver. So if you're in the Vancouver area, stop by, check it out, say hi, say saw him on TV, on the internet.
Hi everybody.
So John, how long have you been with the company?
Started in April of this year, but I've been a bike mechanic working in bike shops since 2008.
Wow, so almost as long as Alex has been alive. Just kidding. He's our cameraman, and big thanks to Alex again for helping us film these. So today we're going to be talking about the drivetrain. John, what's a drivetrain?
A drivetrain consists of the parts that allow your bike and rear wheel to move. So basically, you got your front chainring, or in this case, you have a front chainring. You have your chain, you have your rear gear cluster, you have your derailleur, and sometimes that can include your motor as well, or your pedals, your crank arms. But those are the basic components.
Awesome. So we are going to be looking at the drivetrain on the Ultra Duo step through, again using my lovely bike as our model. So we're just going to start off the top with some common issues you might find with your drivetrain and how to troubleshoot those to maybe pinpoint what's going on. So John, what's one of the most common issues you see come in for a drivetrain?
A lot of times people will complain about their gears not shifting well, and that can look like a couple different things. Either you're trying to shift into an easier gear and the gear is not getting quite there and it kind of makes like a clicking noise, or maybe you're trying to shift into a harder gear and it also doesn't quite get there, or it does and it makes like a clicking noise as well. So those are signs that your chain is not well aligned on the cog.
Now, I found on mine that I use this bike for commuting basically to and from work every day and some fun rides on the weekend. I've noticed recently it kind of goes clunk and chunk on certain gears. How do we figure out what's going on with that?
Okay, so the first thing I would ask is, are you noticing it's getting that clunk noise when you're shifting into an easier gear or shifting into a harder gear?
Usually when I'm shifting to an easier gear. So now when I say an easier gear, which cog would that be?
When you shift into a larger cog, that's going to make pedaling more easier. So like when you're going up a hill, you're going to be wanting to shift into some of these larger cogs. And then when you're starting to go faster, you're going to be wanting to shift into some of these smaller cogs.
Awesome. So I do a lot of flat street riding, and I find the sweet spot on my 9-speed gear chain for me personally to be in like the 3 to 7, generally 5, 6, 7 range. So but I do find when I'm downshifting into my easier gears, 3, 2, and 1, that's when I get the clunk and chunk.
Okay.
So we can turn on my bike if we want and see if we can replicate and just show that off.
Sure, do it.
So this is also something you can test on a kickstand test, which we've covered in a previous video, and we do have an article in our support help desk pages there on how to do a kickstand test. I'm just lucky enough for today at work to have a bike stand. So let's shift. Currently I'm sitting in gear 2, it looks like. Yes. So this is just going for a spin. And I'm going to shift it to 1, and then I'll go back all the way up and down. And I'll power it off before we start tinkering with it.
Well, it doesn't look so bad. but so the way I would diagnose this is, let's just shift down. I'm just going to try and pedal it manually because I can sometimes feel it a little bit easier when I'm pedaling, and without the noise of the motor, it sometimes can be easier to hear what's going on. So it actually feels pretty good. And one way I can also double check this is I can try and put the chain in the middle of the cog. So say if you had 9 cogs in the back, I can try and put the chain into the 5th cog, and that should give you the straightest line of your chain from the front chainring to the rear. I'm just going to shift it one off. And then I can take a look at the chain and see if there's any extra space between the chain and the cog on either side. And this one actually looks pretty decent, but we can simulate what it would look like if it were not looking so great. Look away just for a second.
So just remember, as usual, if you have any questions or comments pertinent to the topic we're talking about today, go ahead and toss those in the chat. We'll be happy to get you some answers while we have our expert Jawn on hand. DJ, do you have any questions coming in yet? Not yet. All right. Now remember, Jawn, I do have to ride this home after work, so we don't want to
so
get it too out of whack.
Now I've messed it up real good. So you can see, well, firstly you can hear that clicking noise, and you can see that the chain's kind of jumping around, not really staying on the gear very well. So that's kind of a sign that the tension of your shifting cable is not quite right. So the way we can address this is shift down to the smallest cog, and then try and shift up and see what happens. And you can see the chain's kind of trying to go up that way. It's kind of trying to jump up to the next largest cog. So what that's telling me is that, well, I guess we have time to do like a quick tutorial on what the cable tension does.
Yeah, you can give a quick overview on that.
So your derailleur is actuated by a cable, and as you put more tension on this cable, the derailleur, this is your rear derailleur, it derails your chain. As you put more tension on this cable, the derailleur moves in this direction. And as you release tension on the cable, the derailleur drops down. So, in the case here, where your chain is trying to jump up to the next gear, that tells me there's too much tension on the cable. We want it to be coming back down a bit. So this is a really quick adjustment you can do to adjust the tension of the cable. And it's a little bit opposite of what you'd think. Righty is loosey, lefty is tighty. So I can loosen the tension of the cable a bit by turning that to the right and then giving it another try. Still clicking a little bit, so I'll take a little bit more off. And in cases like this, you always want to do like a little bit at a time, just like, you know, do a quarter turn, test it out, do a quarter turn, test it out. Because if you're doing a lot, you might overshoot it and then have to go back and forth and ping pong between too loose and too tight. So that looks pretty good. No more clicking noises, no more chain jumping around. Well, that one was a little bit slack. So this looks good in the stand. The next test would be to ride it and see how it is, because it often will not behave the same as it does when you're doing your kickstand test or in a bike stand as opposed to when you're riding it. So it's always a good idea to double check and test ride it before you think it's totally done.
Awesome. And that looked like a fairly simple thing to do overall. However, we know not all of our customers are super comfortable doing that on your own. So that is something you can definitely get help with, like at a local bike shop. It's a standard thing. It's not an e-bike specific thing. There's a lot of videos on the internet, including soon to be this one, on how to take care of that. And as always, if you're ever unsure or just want some advice, shoot us an email. We're happy to help.
There's also a really good video on our support page that details pretty much everything, even more than this, of how to adjust your derailleur, which we're probably not going to get into in depth.
Yes. All right. So that's how we do our tensioning. So now I noticed when you were testing it, you would go all the way down and then all the way up. Even when it jumped in the middle, you still went all the way down and all the way back up. So that would be what you recommend instead of saying, oh, I noticed that middle one jumped, and then going back and forth on those middle ones, correct?
Yes.
Down and up. Full range of motion.
Totally.
Excellent. So that's how we can kind of check our gearing, and that's also known as indexing our gears. So if ever you hear somebody say, oh, my gears need re-indexing, or I'm going to index gears, that's part of what they're referring to here, and that's just making sure everything is lining up nicely. All right, so jumping forward from that, there's also a few other parts of your derailleur to consider if you're hearing, some weird noises, or maybe you've tried this and you still can't get the clunking and chunking to change. What else should we be looking at?
Another common thing is kind of the same type of symptoms, is if you're hearing clunking or rattling while your gears are running or trying to shift, it could be that your derailleur hanger is bent. And luckily this bike has a guard on it, which is really great, because if the bike were to fall over, or maybe you are transporting it and you're putting it this side down in your vehicle, the pressure on the derailleur can actually bend the part that attaches the derailleur to the bike. It's this silver piece right here. It's a piece of aluminum, and its purpose is to break or bend in the case of an impact, so that your derailleur is not damaged, and because your derailleurs cost a lot more. So it's trying to save the life of your derailleur. So you just want to be cautious that if you are transporting your bike, try and transport it on the non-drive side if you're having it face down. And also just be wary of any bumps if your bike falls over, because that can bend the derailleur hanger, and then your derailleur kind of doesn't really sit quite aligned in a straight line up and down with your chain. When it kind of angles like that, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a great time. Now, derailleur hangers, if they get bent, they're not something that it's super easy to bend back, because once they're bent, they're prone to bend again, even if you bend them back, because it does weaken the structure of it. So if you do bend a derailleur hanger, it is something you're going to want to replace. Overall, not an expensive part to replace. However, sometimes can be tricky because there's so many different shapes. It's not a standard, all derailleurs use this one shape of hanger. So if you are having some trouble with that, make sure the new one is the same shape. If you're not sure, send us a photo at support and we will help you figure out which derailleur hanger you need. Your local bike shop could also do the same. So that's just that small but mighty piece to keep that in mind. Is there any more we should be considering on troubleshooting here? Well,
the other thing to add about the derailleur hanger is they can be bent back. You do need a very specialized tool, which most bike shops will have. In many cases, you may not need to replace it, and bending it back will do just fine as well. What else to consider? Well, let's see. The wear of your chain. Are we going to get into the wear chain?
Yeah, let's talk about chains. So chains are what's called a consumable. You're not going to use the same chain for the life of your bike. I mean, depends on the lifespan of your bike, but if you're riding that bike for many years, at some point you're going to want to replace the chain. It is going to wear down. And so that is something to consider. So John, how do we check on that?
I'm going to grab a tool and show you. Okay. So there's this handy dandy tool called a chain wear checker, and you can see over here it says 0.5. Well, it's 0.75 on this side. When you flip it over, it says 0.5. So that's an indication of 50% or 75% wear on your chain if either of these ends fits into your chain. And I'll show you how to measure your chain. So I'm going to try the 50% end first. And what you want to do is, well, let's do it down here. You'll see it better. And if you put that end in and then try and push this end into the chain, you can see it's not fitting in. On a worn chain, that would pop right in there. And 50% is kind of like, all right, this is the point at which you should be becoming aware that your chain's getting a bit worn. And you want to try and catch it before it gets to 75%. If that 75% can fit in there, then at that point you may be needing to change out your rear cogs as well. Because all of this, the drivetrain components wear together. So when your chain wears, it also wears your rear cogs and then your front chainring as well. The front chainring tends to last a lot longer than your chain and your rear gears, but the chain wear is an indicator of wear on all those components as well.
Same idea. DJ just handed me another version of that tool. Same idea. You can kind of adjust to see the sizing there. And this one has your handy dandy hot tip when to replace it.
And another thing to talk about chains is something that you might also think may be like a gear shifting error. If you're hearing like a clicking noise in your chain, it could also be a stiff link. So this is kind of what a stiff link looks like. It doesn't really want to flex very well. So, and then when it's kind of going over your gears and your pulley wheels here, it'll make a clicking noise because it doesn't really want to bend very well.
You know what, chain? My back has the same problem most mornings. Me too. Me too.
And all you need to do with your back or your chain is just give it a good twist and kind of put some pressure on it sideways and lateral pressure on back and forth. And if that doesn't free it up, then you can always give it a little bit of lube and do the same thing again, but that usually does the trick. And that's pretty good now. Ready to go.
Beautiful. And if we've done that and we've lubed it and maybe there's an actual defect on the link, you could always get a fresh link put in, right?
Exactly. You can grab your handy dandy chain tool and pop out a link. These are tools you can grab at pretty much any bike shop. And I'll just say that this link here was the stiff one. You can just pop that one out and grab a master link and replace that, because it's a lot easier to do that and a lot less resource consumption than to just replace the entire chain.
And again, something your local shop can definitely help you out with, something that's super common that they'll have experience doing.
Totally. And there it goes. And then that can come off. And then you just pop another master link on there and connect the other portion of your chain.
Awesome. And then you're back up and
Yep.
rolling.
Back in
Love that
business.
for us. DJ's reminding me to look at kinked cabling that could affect your shifting as well.
Mm-hmm. So running from the front of your bike is a shifter cable and housing, and it runs all the way through your frame and out here to your rear derailleur.
It's what's attached to the little knob we were adjusting earlier.
Mm-hmm. So if there's any bends or kinks in this housing or cable, it can cause friction from that cable going through there, and can also kind of result in the same types of symptoms of it not really shifting very well. And if you do notice any kinks or even like some fraying of your cable, that could be causing that problem, and replacing the housing or shifting cable could be a good solution for that.
Fantastic. All right, so that's some of the more common things to check for when we're troubleshooting, stuff you can look for yourself, stuff your bike shop may look for. Now, there's also preventative measures we can take so that we aren't having to troubleshoot to help keep our bikes healthy, happy, and rolling. So let's talk about some maintenance while we're on the topics of chains. I know Alex has gotten some tight shots of this drivetrain already. It looks a little grimy, I think. A lot of road crud. So let's talk about how do we clean our chain, what do we use, and what do we do once it's clean?
Okay. So some of the easy things you can use to clean your chain. In bike shops, we often use isopropyl alcohol, which is something you can readily get from any pharmacy or department store.
Commonly called rubbing alcohol.
Yep.
Yep.
It's relatively cheap, easy to find. Or you can find more specific chain degreasers.
Yeah, so this is one from my personal tool collection. You'll see it's WD-40. That is the brand. That doesn't mean you can grab any WD-40 and just hose down your chain willy-nilly, whether to clean it or to re-grease it. So please just make sure whatever you're picking up is specified for that job.
So how I clean my chain is I'll usually spray whatever thingy thing I'm using onto a rag, and then put it onto my chain at some point and try and clean off all the excess gunk on that chain. With these mid drives, it is a little bit more challenging. Normally you can just kind of backpedal and put your rag down here. If you have a hub drive motor, it's a little easier because the chain is a little bit more accessible, but we can still do this. Might need another.
I definitely put extra road
Look at
crud
that
on
stuff.
it just for you, John.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're saving it up, I see.
Yeah, a few months now.
So I always try and clean the chain off first before I re-lubricate it. Looking a bit more shiny.
Definitely a lot less chunkage coming around the bend.
That's probably pretty good. So now we can grab our chain lube, and so in regards to applying your chain lube, a lot of questions I get is how much and how often should I apply chain lube? And there's not really a solid answer for that. It really depends on how often you're riding, the conditions you're riding in, and the type of lube you're using. So if you're riding your bike like every day, I would say probably lube your chain at least once a week. And try and follow these instructions that we're going to give, because you definitely don't want to overdo it. I've seen people put a lot of chain lube on their bike and it actually has the opposite effect.
You don't want it to be too gunky, and again, specific products. Make sure what you're putting on there is for bike chains. We've had folks ask, well, can I use motorcycle grease? Or no, that's too much. It's not, you're not gonna have a good time. Bike specific. There's tons of variety out there. I have two different ones in my hand. Again, one from my personal collection. Again, it's WD-40, that's just the brand name. Don't just use regular WD-40. This is an all-condition chain lubricant. You can get wet conditions and dry, but again, it's for chains. Bought it at a bike shop. You also have like Tri-Flow, which is the stuff we use here in the shop. And it's got a little dripper. The other one's an aerosol. So there are options. Just make sure it's appropriate for the job. DJ, do you have some questions?
Question by Tom. How do I know that the derailleur hanger protective piece is aligned correctly? Do I need it, or can it be removed?
How you know if your derailleur hanger is aligned correctly? It's kind of
the protective piece.
Oh, the
guard.
The guard?
Oh, the guard.
I mean, technically a guard would be optional. You could take it off, but it's a nice thing to have for the reasons John stated earlier, to protect your derailleur itself from dings and damages. It's kind of like, think of it like a helmet or like a knee pad, you know, for the joint that is your derailleur. It's just help keep it safe from all those bangs and bumps during transport or riding. So technically, yeah, you could take it off, but it's nice to have on there. How do you check that it's aligned? I mean,
actually, there's a couple things I have seen with the guard. Sometimes when the guard does its job, it actually gets bent. So, and then what happens is your gears can't shift all the way down to the smallest cog because the derailleur the guard is bent in and preventing the derailleur from moving. So that's one thing I see. I've seen that a couple times, but it's a good indication that this is doing its job. So you just want to be careful, or just want to be aware. Like if you're getting all your gears shifting well, then your guard is in its right place.
and like just on mine, I can fit my whole hand in between my derailleur and the guard, so I know it's
Let's just
sitting
shift
pretty.
down, and you can see there is a fair amount of space in there
Right.
when your derailleur is all the way at its slowest.
But I can still fit without putting pressure on my derailleur.
Cool.
Fabulous. All right, so I'm gonna hand you this super lubricant to lube up that chain.
All right. So what I do is I just turn the pedal slowly and then dribble this on, not excessively. And the idea with chain lube is we want to be getting that chain lube on the inside of the chain. That's where it's going to be working the best. If it's on the outside of the chain, it's not really going to be doing a great job aside from attracting dirt and dust and mud that sticks to it. So once we put the chain lube on, you want to see, yeah, there's a good coat on there now. My finger is kind of slick, so I'm going to work it in a bit and try and get that chain lube on the inside of the chain. And after I've worked it in a bit, then I want to wipe off the excess on the chain. And then we'll probably get some more black gunky stuff coming off too. There you go. I think that should probably do the trick. Nice, shiny, lubricated chain.
Awesome.
Voila.
Looking great. Love that for me. So, now that we've talked about the chains and we've kind of gone over the indexing and doing some of your own troubleshooting and things you can do to fix it, what are some things that for Joe Rider, just think of the folks who generally buy your bikes that you've met in the showroom in Vancouver. Some people are technical, some people are not. I feel like chain lube, that's probably pretty straightforward for most people, but what's something you would definitely recommend? Don't try this at home, go to your bike shop or get in touch with support.
I guess a common thing that I'm seeing is having to adjust your brakes. It's, if you have like some mechanical competency, it's something that can be done. But in terms of drivetrain stuff,
Maybe replacing a hanger. I mean, it's always going to be up to personal skill level and
Right.
preference. So some people may be, yeah, I can watch a video on YouTube, I got this down, we're great. Some folks may just not feel that. And again, support's always there to help you, and so is our showroom mechanics like John.
So I guess one thing to think about with drivetrain is when you do get to a point where your drivetrain is worn and that tool does fit into your chain, you will need a couple of specific tools. Number one, to remove your chain, and if it's gone beyond the point of wear, then perhaps replacing your gears as well, and you do need some specific tools to do that. So if you are kind of a home mechanic and you have those tools and you want to go at it, good for you. If not, you can come to any bike shop and they can help you out with that as well.
Because again, these are not e-bike specific parts. These
Yep.
are your regular bicycle. You're going to find these on a Trek, on anybody else really.
Exactly.
So pretty much any shop should be able to help you out. And again, our support team's also there to help you out. Fantastic. Was there any other drivetrain things you wanted to touch on? I think we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, I think we talked about a lot of stuff, and nothing else comes to mind right now.
And I definitely
Any
got my
questions?
gears indexed and my derailleur aligned and my chain cleaned and lubed. So love that. Awesome. Thanks so much, John. This has been even a really great learning experience for me, and I hope everybody out there finds this really interesting and useful. DJ, do you have any questions?
On a mid drive, you turn the wheel forward.
On a mid-drive, you turn the wheel forward, and we can just demonstrate it here, because that's the only way the train will go. It's designed to disengage and not turn the chain wheel and stuff backwards. So if you're trying to do like when John showed off lubing and cleaning the chain, you're going to want to turn it forward. Also noted, my bike is not turned on, so when he did that, it did not engage the motor. Definitely don't leave your motor on for this.
Good point. Very good
Safety
point.
first.
Yeah. That's good.
All right, DJ, anything else on the questions there?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right, so I think we are going to wrap it up there. So just remember, take care of your drivetrain and your bike will take care of you. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We are always happy to help. We do have resources on our support page for different things regarding your drivetrain. It's really warm in here and the words are falling out of my head. So yeah, just keep that happy, keep your bike in great condition, and it'll serve you well for a lot of years. We'll be back next week with another live. Just a hot reminder, it is a long weekend in Canada this weekend, so support will not be here on Monday, but we will get your questions on Tuesday. Thanks again for joining me, John. This has been awesome, and I was so stoked when you got here on Monday, and I was like, yeah, I know what we're doing on Friday. John's coming to help. So this
Cleaning
is
your drivetrain, eating pizza.
heck yeah, so good. Just another fun Friday at Biktrix. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you next week.